Hi everyone, this is Hanney of Critical Faculty. Today we are going to be talking about the right to disbelief, and I'm very happy to have with me in the studio today the director of Atheist Alliance International, Stella Thomas. Hello Stella, how are you?
Hi Hanney, thank you for having me. I will just correct you there, I'm not the director, I'm the regional director for Australasia, so that's sort of the Australia, New Zealand area.
Fair enough, that's what I meant to say actually. I might have misspoke that.
Okay.
So you look after the Australia and New Zealand as well, so the Australasia.
Yeah, and I'm relatively new to the role, so I was invited to nominate, and yes, I attend the meetings, and it's been an interesting experience as I sort of reach out, I guess, globally, understanding more global issues. I've been interested in issues nationally in Australia for probably over 15 years and lobbied on in those areas. I'm also on the board of the Rationalist Society of Australia, and we basically, as an organisation, we lobby for reason and evidence-based policy making, which I think most people will generally think is a good idea to base policy on those things.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that I follow in Atheist Alliance International on Facebook, and you guys do a lot of good work, especially in the main area in the US. I was not aware that Australia had actually a representation. But before we delve into this area, can you tell us a little bit about your background? What sort of excited you about the role? Why were you chosen for the role in the first place?
I think because I've got a background in Australia over 15 years or so or more, I've lobbied on issues in public schools in Australia. I've lobbied on prayer in council. I recently did a submission for the religious discrimination bill. I've been on the Rationalists board, and I think when you're in that free thought space, you tend to cross similar names, and along that way I met a couple of people who suggested that I nominate, and I took that opportunity. So it's sort of opened up another world which I knew was out there of people that struggle with, even though we have, I mean, obviously by comparison, Australia has a lot of religious freedom, but we still have our issues. We still have a lot of religious privilege issues. But yeah, seeing the issues that happen overseas and being able to try and I guess support organisations over there, help them network, and there's lots of elements to AAI and their affiliates.
Right. I mean, I broadcast mostly to areas where the religious freedom is sort of a luxury. That's sort of not a sort of thing people would talk about much because it's so out of reach. They look at Australia, United States, and Europe as completely liberated countries, and we can do whatever we want whenever we want. But that's not necessarily true. We still have some grounds to cover. Tell us about some of the obstacles you're trying to overcome.
If I can start with a positive note, having been in this space for a long time, only a short time ago we passed marriage equality, and we're sort of watching that happen globally. So I think that's a really significant issue. What I think was interesting at the time was when you looked at I don't have the figures in front of me, but the campaigns, the no campaign against marriage equality, which was predominantly led by the churches, not entirely, but predominantly, they were spending massively more than the yes campaign, like millions, and yet the yes campaign won. So I thought that was, a significant step forward for Australia, despite the fact that there was such strong opposition. Also along those lines, we've seen progressively from state to state, so that was a federal law, is the voluntary assisted dying, or people know that as voluntary euthanasia. And we're slowly passing, I think the 6th state has passed. My state, SA, was the 5th. or the fourth. I'm just sort of counting. And so we've still got a little way to go there, but we're slowly passing that across Australia. And that only occurred, I believe, this year in South Australia. And so we are seeing, we're slowly breaking down barriers. And when you look at both of those issues, I think what they both signify is about individual choice. So if you don't accept, if you're not comfortable with marriage equality, then don't marry someone of the same sex and you've solved that problem. I don't see the argument any more complicated than that. They should have equal rights. And I think the same with voluntary assisted dying. If you don't agree with it, then don't follow it. We do have these checks and balances in place to protect people. And they're both areas where I'm not interested in marrying someone of the same gender, and I'm, don't feel that I necessarily want to access voluntary assisted dying. But I feel that as a society, we are more progressive in allowing people those rights. But having said that, there's still a number of areas in Australia where we do see a lot of religious privilege where.
What about the dicey position of abortion? Because I believe in the US right now, especially in the sort of the Bible Belt area, there's a lot of controversial laws have been trying to be passed about the, I think it was up to 2 weeks, anything after 2 weeks. People can actually, it's like bounty hunting. You can actually tell on people. It's crazy.
That's just horrific. I mean, it does not represent the real. I mean, to me, an abortion it's a medical decision. It's between you and your doctor. You still need, obviously, guidelines and limitations and all those other features. I don't know a great deal about all the legislation. I know that we've got more and more protections that we're trying to enact in Australia. Again, it comes down to personal choice. And yeah, what they're doing in the US, to women, it's just devastating. And you're talking about something that's fundamentally a person's being, the essence of who they are, being controlled by men in court. That is just fundamentally devastating to those women that would be struggling with difficult decisions. Sorry, I can't hear.
I've muted myself. A question from the audience, an interesting one. Is there a Bible Belt in Australia?
I think there is. I really do. And
same here.
I'd be interested to, Hanney, I'd be interested in what your view is, because I know what my view is, because you've been here less.
Well, I think it will be quite similar, because I think it's going to be similar everywhere. It doesn't matter which country, but areas where it's a sort of less open to the rest of the world, more closed upon themselves, maybe not as coastal, maybe a little bit inner, maybe have older generation, have older population, slightly on the older side. They'll tend to have more conservative views, not just on religion and everything. And you'll find that in the southern states in the US. And I think we find some of them, probably one in your area, City of Churches, was one, and maybe Queensland a bit.
Well, it's interesting because I think South Australia is actually one of the more progressive states. We were the first people to legalise homosexuality. So, and that was based on and we had a very progressive premier at the time, Don Dunstan, and he legalised quite a few sort of issues around there. And we're just a bit, but I think when you nailed, I would say Queensland and New South Wales, and I guess for me, it's sort of represented also politically. So you have a lot more, or you seem to have more conservative politicians, although they seem to be, in my mind, they're growing in South Australia as well. There is a bit of an enclave that's been developing in the recent couple of years. We've got a revival of, I think, party called the Family First. So they're pushing in every state, but I would say it's more the East Coast.
We were chatting offline today about this sort of resurgence and revival of resurrection of the conservative agenda. Why do you think the reason for that? I mean, it should be like newer generations coming up into the fold, new ideas, science is prevailing. Do you think there might be some sort of a pushback because of the woke sort of culture where you can't say certain things and people are fed up? They just want to say, I want to say what's on my mind whenever I want to say it. And being silenced, that's not a really cool thing. And then you get this conservative agenda where we'll let you say whatever you want to say, whether it's true or scientifically factual, but they guarantee you that sort of conversation. So they end up sort of turning up in numbers. Do you think this could be a reason why there is a resurgence of conservative agenda?
I don't really know what the resurgence. I don't consider myself an expert to sort of understand that, and I think even the experts don't understand it. If you understand it, then you're missing something. But having said that, I think there's this real everybody's got an opinion, and I'm all for I'm all for free speech and having an opinion, but you can't make up your own facts. And I think that's one of the issues today is people sort of make up their own. I mean, we look at sort of COVID and the issues around that, and it's quite frightening because we're sort of pushing some scientific understandings aside, and then we sort of get along on, and we see this politically as well. People sort of get caught up with ideas and, I don't know, groupthink, and I'm just sort of, I'm a little bit out of my depth to sort of understand. I'll debate it myself, but I don't really understand why we see all this.
It is complicated. I don't think you can pin it to one thing. There's a lot, especially when you're talking about zeitgeist, which is how people think in groups, and that is very complicated, and it might be predicated on number of things, not just one or two. It's this very complex sort of issue. But if we relate it to the religious issue, because I think this is probably where we want to focus today, the conservative agenda, it's perceived to be a little bit on the anti-science, or at least not pro-science. There seems to be, you get your creationism, your intelligent design of instead of evolution. There's a certain agenda that sort of promotes God as a creator and a sustainer and the reason for everything, which then puts people to sleep and say, well, we don't really need to know much. We've got the answers to things. Yeah. While on the other hand, and we talk about secularism a lot because we're honestly, we're not here to stop people from believing whatever they want to believe in, but at least on the scientific issues, they need to be well informed.
Yeah. My position, very much my public position, is I'm very pro-secular. So I actually, if someone wants to use God to fill the blanks, that's okay with me, but not when it comes to policy and decision making. So it concerns me. While I think our politicians can have religious belief, I don't think it needs. It does concern me when they let that inform their decision. I mean, we have climate change deniers in leadership, and that in itself is incredibly frightening. And these are the same people who will pray to God for a solution. I mean, that's what our current Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, will often do. And he has said that publicly. When we had the disastrous fires about 2 years ago, he said, my knees are, or something to the effect of, my knees are sore from praying, or I can't remember his exact wording. And I thought, well, you should have met with the fireys as they requested 6 months earlier. And so it really concerns me when they don't have that secular approach in our, when they're overseeing the lives of other people. So I'm all for protecting people's right to belief and to have that belief, but not in our shared spaces. So I sort of think of it with our government, our public schools, our hospitals, all of those to me need to be secular and inclusive spaces. I mean, we in Australia, every time we open government meetings, whether that's federal or state, and quite a lot of local councils, but not all local councils, they open with a Christian prayer. I personally don't understand why that is happening in Australia today at a time when we need to be united. I think we need to find a way to have a community pledge. So I will act with honesty and integrity and make a statement of that, as opposed to expecting everyone in the room to,
I think they should replace it with waltzing Matilda or something different, you know, something a bit more cheerful, something more Aussie. It's when you talked about, you know, that image of the fires and 500 million animal perish in agony, and somebody in office have been elected, and the best they could do is be on their knees praying. That is an incredible image in my head there. Well, I mean, that's useless.
Yeah, he. I don't remember the quote. I wish I had it in front of me, but it was just, "Oh, my prayer knees are sore," or "My knees are sore from praying." And I thought, well, you're the Prime Minister of Australia, and I don't mind if the rest of Australia feels that they need to do that because they need to bring solace or whatever. But as a leader, I think you need to be doing more, and you should have done more prior to that event when the leadership in the fire department wanted to meet, and he was busy holidaying instead. So, and I think also I'm not confident with their climate change position. When you fundamentally feel that Jesus will be returning to fix things, it changes the way you make decisions. And I feel that that's a dangerous position to be in. We as humans need to be responsible for our own actions. And that's one of the dangers, I think, of religion, is having solutions and knowing that someone else will fix the problem. That's not to say that all religious people like that. I mean, many of my family and friends, more distant, are, I guess, religious or Christian, and they can still think practically, and they can still think logically, and they can still support climate action and things like that. But when our leader, I mean, recently, trying to remember, he took a helicopter ride to talk to the churches and talked about raising up, I can't remember the words, but something to the effect of raising more church and religion in Australia. And one of the other things I just touched on, I think earlier, was the National School Chaplaincy Program. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
I am indeed, but I think most of our audience won't be, so please do let us know.
So we go back to 2006. It was proposed by Access Ministries to a local member, Greg Hunt, and that they put a chaplain in every public school. John Howard at the time for the Liberals thought that was a great idea. So here we are in 2021, and we've spent $1 billion putting chaplains in public schools. Now, they said that it wasn't forced religion because schools had a choice not to take one. But that meant schools that were in desperate need for wellbeing support still put their hands up, because the idea was you take a $20,000 a year chaplain or you get nothing. And that was the ultimatum. And this has gone on over the years. There's been lots of, it was even developed by the churches, the program. At one stage, Labor did get in, and they finally got some basic qualifications. They did introduce a secular worker at one stage, but then as soon as Liberals got back, they threw that out. So it deeply concerns me that we have our public schools with religious workers that on a program that hasn't been tested properly, hasn't been properly, what was it? There was no stated benefits and no defined outcomes in any form of the program. But what it does show is that schools desperately need this wellbeing support. And only just now, there's a mental health investigation by the government, and one of the recommendations is that the National School Chaplaincy be independently reviewed. And that's one of the first times since 2006 that they're going to actually review the program. So you can have a worker who is excellent with students and is well qualified, but the chaplaincy program will reject them and not put them in the school if they are not deeply committed to Christ. And these chaplains have to be deeply committed. They have to believe that Jesus rose from, and that Jesus will return. They have to be deeply committed. They have to show their credentials, that they attend church, that they're religiously active. Only then are they allowed near children. And I just find that in a public school, that's just really unacceptable.
I mean, this is insane. As you understand it, Stella, I mean, especially Christianity. Sorry, I'm hearing a bit myself feedback your end, I think. Is there?
Don't think so.
All right, I'm hearing myself again. I'm not sure where I'm hearing myself. But the situation of, I think I probably figured it out. If you mute yourself while I'm speaking, you probably will stop the feedback.
Okay, so I mute myself.
Yeah, so you just, it should be a microphone sort of icon, and you just click on it, and it should mute it.
I can do stop mic camera, so I'll stop both.
No, just the mic. But I think I might be able to do it for you. I think I've done it for you. I'm very sorry because it's a horrible feedback. So religions are intrinsically apocalyptic. They want the end of the world. They want it to come. And as you know, the evangelists in the United States are very much are in cahoots with the Nazi, sorry, not Nazi, the Israeli regimes, because they believe once Israel goes back to the promised land, this paves the way to the fake Jesus to come first, and then followed by Jesus, and then that will be the second coming, and then Armageddon. And when you have mentality like that, why would you try to fix anything? As a matter of fact, when things gets worse, that means it actually paves the way to the what do you want to happen. That's incredibly evil. I
don't understand. We've also got another issue in Australia where religious instruction comes into public schools as well. And early on in the piece, I got my hands on a pack which was delivered to my own school. And in it, the local churches would come and they'd do the Christmas story. And I saw them, I went to watch a couple of shows over the years. And there was one where they had the church people dressed up as scientists in science lab coats, claiming we found the evidence of Jesus. And these are to 5-year-old children, which I thought was totally inappropriate. And in one of these packs, there was a prayer book for kids, which I know that my school didn't allow them to go in and do the actual lessons on top. So credit to my school. But some schools do. And one is, it says, "Dear God, I give you my life messed up as it is." So why would you tell a 5-year-old child your life is messed up and you need to give it to God to be saved? I just think that's fundamentally wrong in a school environment. And that's one of the issues, I think, with Christianity is you're sinful, you're messed up. I still remember a clear vision. Years ago, I became a godparent to one of my friends. And this was when I was about 20 maybe. And I didn't think much of it. I thought, yep, I'll come along. And I went off to the church and I was the godparent. And then I had to wish the sin away for the baby. And I'm looking going, this baby's not a sinner. And you know, they're calling this innocent little baby a sinner. And that just had a real impact on me. And I thought that's just, and so of course I've been christened, I was brought up Catholic, but I thought I'm not doing this to my children. I'm not going to look at them as sinful beings that need to be cleansed and saved. That it's like, what do? They create the problem so then they can offer you the Band-Aid to fix it.
I think it's child abuse, isn't it? It's a child abuse. There's no two other.
Yeah, I guess, you know, I mean, it happened to me. I don't feel abused, but I do think, yeah, when you're telling a 5-year-old to say, you know, give up my life, I give you my life as messed up as it is. Like, I'm sorry, a 5-year-old's life isn't messed up. They're not a sinner. That's just, yeah. I think that level.
But I mean, you probably, most of us would not really suffer much. But imagine, let's say you have homosexual tendencies and you're very young, and then you've been told these things, and you live the conflict of you want to believe because you want to be a good person, but you've been told your very nature is an evil one. That is the worst.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think, and that also brings me to, I don't understand why we even had to have this vote on marriage equality. It should have just been the government passing it. You know, to subject these people to the opinion of other people was simply wrong. And just now today, only last week I did a submission for the Religious Discrimination Bill, as did the Rational Society of Australia and many, many other free thought organisations. And there's also a couple of groups you can join, like the Do Not Divide Us campaign, that are a coalition of free thought groups. But the Religious Discrimination Bill is looking to expand the opportunity for, at the moment in Australia, you can fire a teacher for being gay. And they're looking to sort of expand that opportunity or that privilege. And I just think that, you know, we should all be treated equal. And I do not see any valid argument for a school saying, but it's our religious right to not have gay people in our ranks, because they're teaching our children, and guaranteed in a school of a few hundred or whatever, guaranteed some of them are going to be questioning their sexuality, are going to be on the spectrum, on, you know, LGBTQI, guaranteed. And so what message does that send to those children? So you might treat an adult badly, which you have no right to do in the first place anyway, but then you're sending that message to children that it's okay to treat some people as second class. And, you know, and I can't stand the hate the sin but love the sinner line. It's like, well, no, that's just, either way you're a bigot. It's homophobia legalised, and it's just fundamentally wrong. There's also, sorry, I can't hear you.
I said I've been told I'm a bit too loud, and I think I've got myself on a whisper mode, which is my night broadcast when my wife is asleep. So I'm gonna change the mode, more balance. But I wanted to say, it also betrays ignorance. That sort of homosexual teacher that's been told not to be in school, as if homosexuality is contagious. The other kids are gonna catch it or something.
Yeah. But even now, today, there's cases of a de facto, someone living in a de facto relationship gets pregnant out of wedlock and they can be fired. I mean, how is that justified? But also on the issue of there's gay conversion therapy. Now we're trying to, and I think that's a global issue as well, where countries are trying to progressively ban or expand gay conversion therapy. Now, I think Victoria managed to ban it, I'm pretty sure. And I'm not quite sure what the position is of other states. But
I believe it's banned in Victoria now, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not sure about other states. And you get people crying out going, oh, well, it's our right to offer gay conversion therapy to our child if they're showing homosexual tendencies. And quite frankly, I don't think it is a right of any parent to do. You know, it's their right to support their child and guide them, not to tell them that they're bad and they're second class and there's something wrong with them. It's just terrible. And again, that's driven predominantly by religious belief. So, yeah.
The good thing, I think, the world is heading into, there is a certain direction. You might find some pockets of resistance here and there, but the general direction is towards the science and the information and the data. why some people are homosexual, why up to 5 or 6% of mammals and different creatures in the animal kingdom display the same behavior. There's a lot of things to say that these things have been with us from day one, and they are quite normal and quite natural.
Yeah, and I think interestingly, I heard said, so homosexuality to me is natural. It occurs through many species. Something that's not natural, religion. Find a species of animal that practices a religion. The only ones are human. So I thought that was an interesting.
They tell you that some of the crows that bury their dead, and that's the religious birds.
Yeah, and elephants. But I think I would say that being humanist, I would say that's more along the lines, not humanism, but humanism is another. So to me, I think of humanism. You know, that's where you're more connected with. I think of myself as a humanist. So you sort of have empathy. We still have ceremonies. We still care for our bury our dead. You know, I think people feel like if you lose religion, then you lose values, and all those things for me are innate. You certainly don't have. One thing that I get quite frustrated by is this perception from Christianity that they've got some sort of monopoly on values. I find that really offensive. I find, you know, you can be Christian and have values. You can be not Christian and have values. Don't tell me that those values are only derived from Christianity, because there's a lot of things that Christianity has done that I don't think they should be too proud of over the years. You know, the Inquisition, what did they do to poor old Galileo? It just goes on. But for some people it brings them solace. So good luck to them if that's what it is. But they don't have a monopoly on, you know, sort of, values, as I said.
Yeah, the monopoly on morality and trying to make morality objective, and it's a very very interesting concept that, you know, talk about morality, and they have to be objective, and they have to come from an objective source, and therefore God exists, and that's sort of one of the arguments for God, and we try to explain and show them through evidence throughout the ages that morality has always been relative, and it changes throughout the ages. But for some reason that doesn't sink in, and then they sort of propose the divine command theory that things have become good because they've been uttered by God, including the demand to kill Israelites and the Amalekites, for example. It's a sort of cleansing of a certain ethnicity, up to the rape or take the virgins and kill the children, and that becomes good because it's been uttered by God. That's incredible.
Yeah, I don't understand how people can, what do they call it? Cognitive dissonance. Like, how can they reconcile that in their mind? I mean, if I saw a child being raped, I'd stop it. And I also know that most people I know would do the same thing. So I think it's actually was Sam Harris that might have said either God can do nothing to stop catastrophes, or he doesn't care to stop catastrophes, or he doesn't exist. So, you know, which is it? Is he, what do they say? Is he imaginary, evil, or powerless? So you need to pick through those three.
Well, it's even before. I mean, that's posited first by the ancient Greeks, and obviously they had many different forms, all the way to Euthyphro and the dilemma, and it's incredible that we still sort of think that morality, even though there's so many evidence that shows that morality has been changing, including now people are going vegetarian right now, on the back of the reduction of suffering, and that sort of thing was not even on the table some couple of 100 years ago. But now we understand through science that creatures suffer and feel pain and feel torture, and we changed our morality on the back of that. I think Peter Singer is our very own philosopher here down under, in his animal liberation book and work, is trying to advocate that animal rights.
Yeah. And not to mention that the effect that has in climate change, the eating of meat. So people are doing it for the animals, and they're doing it for the environment, and many other reasons. I just wanted to give, there's been recently, the Rationalist Society recently issued a report, which it's a very comprehensive report called Religiosity in Australia, which can be found online. And what that's actually shown is that Australia, there's been a gross misrepresentation of the views of religious leaders, and it's largely out of touch with Australia itself, which sort of represents what we see when we've got marriage equality through, voluntary assisted dying. I'll also add those things there. There's been religious groups that have actually lobbied for supporting marriage equality and voluntary assisted dying. And there's also religious groups that don't support the religious discrimination bill in its current form. So that report was really quite interesting, and that can be found with online at rationalist.com.au. There's also, I was talking about the religious discrimination bill earlier, and there's elements in there where they're looking to allow doctors to have conscientious objections. So, for example, if a woman, even me, goes to request a pill at any age, it can be a conscientious objector to not prescribe the pill. And I think that's a deeply concerning move. It makes no sense in a progressive society that a doctor can make a decision for a woman to have contraception or not. And then, if you take that back to being in a country town and you've got one doctor, where do you go for support? So that's another sort of area of...
Yesterday, I was arguing Mother Teresa and whether she was actually as benevolent as she was perceived to be. And I think she held the same Catholic views as AIDS is bad, but not as bad as condoms. And that was uttered in India and Calcutta, where people are in the millions and they're struggling with population. Such an evil and horrible thing to say while people are struggling with resources. And
I think that was attributed to one of the popes.
Yes, yeah, it was a Catholic.
And actually, I think it was even repeated by, I've just gone blank, George Pell, possibly.
Oh well, George Pell would have held the thing, but he probably would have. I think he came to Q&A. I think he had a conversation with Richard Dawkins, and it was quite laughable the way he thought we came from the Neanderthal and didn't have a clue about evolution. It was just it was very.
Having discussed all the, so in Australia we're doing pretty well, but we've got a long way to go. We've got to deal with the religious discrimination bill. We've got to deal with the national school chaplaincy. We've got to give kids real support in schools with wellbeing officers that are trained as wellbeing officers whose priority is the wellbeing of the child, not bringing Jesus into schools. And there's plenty of evidence on why that national school chaplaincy is purely about a religious element. They've stated that quite a lot. And I think things like the prayer in government, we've got to do something about being more inclusive to everyone. And, even if you have a moment's silence, you can still pray in your own mind and have a pledge to community. We are here to do business and act with integrity and honesty and in the best interest of our constituents. But I just wanted to touch on the Atheist Alliance International, and the reason I've got the role. They've got, what they actually do is they unite a lot of groups and individuals across the world and enables them to support each other through mutual goals of educating about critical thinking and protecting people from being discriminated or worse, criminalised for their beliefs. And some of your viewers will know there's about, I think, 13 countries that have the death penalty for apostasy. And the AAI have created a program called Atheist Support Network, which helps people in need with asylum advice, letters of introduction, passports, jobs, education, accommodation, legal support, including some cash support. And they have a lot of affiliates, such as, I think just one of them would be the Atheist Refugees Turkey.com. And first, so they work with a lot of critical cases. They assess the facts of the case, and then they also monitor these cases. And there's many, if you go onto their website, they've got lots of blogs with some great stories of people who have been able to be assisted, whether that's moving to another country or even within their own countries to be protected. And I think it's really important that we support AAI or even any of the other organisations in Australia as well to help them further enable their work. You can become a member of AAI and or donate if that's easier. But I think, you can't lose sight of, I guess, we're all individual humans and we all deserve the right to freedom of thought, freedom of belief. I've often said, if I could snap my fingers and get rid of religion, I wouldn't do it, because I know that many people draw solace from it. But at the same time, there is significant harm. And so it's just about making our shared spaces secular, making our laws based on evidence and reason. And I don't think that's really too complicated, but there's a lot of, as we were discussing much earlier, there's a lot of conservative, I don't know, not aggressive, what's the word? There's this need to control people. There's this need to make people feel that they're, whether it's second class or that they're, forget. There's just this, I'm trying to think of the right words, but.
So there's a bit of segregation and discrimination. So in order for different levels of people, and some are elite, some are less elite, and that's how. But this has been a game, Stella, that's been played for so long now. The politics,
thousands of years, nothing's new.
Nothing new.
I do, but I think we've made a lot of progress. If I did read a while back Steven Pinker's book, Better Angels of Our Nature. And that's a really interesting, audio book, got through it that way. But it's a really interesting book because it sort of talks about, historically, some of the, people's heads were chopped off and stuck on posts. We sort of progressed from that. I mean, not entirely throughout the entire world, but the majority of the world is relatively civilized by comparison to a few hundred years ago. But the trouble is today, I think one of our biggest problems is population growth. There's a lot more of us, so we exacerbate our problems through having so many of us to try and feed and clothe and please, and that's a lot of personalities out there.
Well, I've done my bit by being an antinatalist.
Right.
I've done my bit, my contribution, which is doing nothing basically.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, but as you're rightly so. I mean, that book would tell you the numbers and statistics will tell you that we are on the improvement. Humanity is getting better. There's less, but because of media as well, things are highly exposed and saturated. It looks like there's more happening, but it isn't really according to numbers.
Yeah. That reminds me of a quote that I've got, one of my favourite. It's a British philosopher, A.C. Grayling, which I guess some of your listeners would have heard of. He's just got lots of great books and he's so eloquent, and I do recommend people look him up. But he did make this quote once. He said, "The rise of activism and it makes they raise the activism and it makes it look as though there's more religion, but actually there's just more noise from an increasingly small group of people. The appearance of religious revivalism is a symptom of religious decline, and the empirical data supports this." So I think what we're seeing is this sort of, not panic, but this push from a smaller number of people. And the Religiosity in Australia report sort of shows that it's the leaderships of, like, you look at the Australian Christian Lobby and those types of organisations, they're making a lot of noise, and even in like politics, we have a predominantly more religious people in politics than in the general population. And there's a big push to get more and more religious people into politics. They've got internships and all sorts of arrangements going on to get to Christianise in Australian politics. But when you do look at the numbers and the people on the ground and the general population, it's not growing at the same rate. Fortunately, people are being more progressive. We are making steps. You know, we are passing marriage equality. There's been a lot of and voluntary sister dying, and there's been a lot of opposition to the religious discrimination bill, which hopefully we're waiting to see what happens this third round. But it's been shelved twice and come back out on its third visit. So, but we just don't know which direction that's going to take. So if anyone's interested in sort of supporting, trying to get that bill stopped, there's quite a number of resources online that, you know, you can write a letter to your MP or just generally support the campaign to bring awareness.
I just want to say that on the description of the video, Atheist Alliance International's website is in the description. Would urge people to check out their fantastic work, maybe become a member, donate as either a one-off or do sort of a monthly donation. They do fantastic work, especially with those who seek help after leaving religion. One last step that I wanted to discuss with you before we end our chat today is the fear from the religious that the world is going to be dominated by science and reason, and we're going to have that incredible void of there'll be no arts, no emotions, and we're going to be just cold-blooded people like robots. And please comfort them, Stella, because tell them they're wrong.
How is that not incredibly ridiculous? The world will be ruled by science and reason, and that's a beautiful thing. I mean, like, to me, this is the only life I have, and I value it. To say that this life is second rate and that you're going somewhere better to heaven, I just find that that's not valuing life. I don't understand that. You know, we certainly, back to my home state, South Australia, the arts is huge over here and religion is not. So I think that's another thing. We can just look at the evidence.
But another thing that another thing that religions sort of claim monopoly, even though they pre-existed religion. You've talked about morality. Another thing is art and spirituality. And I think Richard, was Christopher Hitchens called it the numinous, the awe, the wonder, the sense of wonder, the thing that you can go to a movie and still live the story, even though you know it's not real. You know, the Avengers and Superman are not real, but we still enjoy it. Poetry, music, all of that can still exist, absolutely, but you don't have to connect it to the supernatural. That's all.
Yeah. I don't, even when it comes to the supernatural, I don't know how the world began. I'm not a physicist, but I think that there are people out there that can give you a better guide. To just sort of fill it with the God of the blanks, to me, just shuts off questioning, shuts off exploration, shuts off wonder. I think you can have greater wonder without God and greater joy looking up into space. I mean, there was a time when we didn't have, we didn't have the knowledge we had, and we've advanced so much. I don't see why we have to continually try and put a dampener on advancing our understanding. I think once it was said, what happens when we answer all the questions? And the reality is, for every question you ask, you create 100 more. So for every bit of space, so the more we explore space and our universe, the more questions we have. So the fear of suddenly running out of questions, it's just nonsensical.
So that kind of God who hides in the ignorance of man is a bit suspicious, because we keep answering questions, but new questions naturally come up. But for some reason, that claimed deity is hiding only in the shadow of ignorance. He
Yeah.
never come. It's crazy. Like,
Yeah. But I don't even understand. Even if I get into a debate on how did life begin, how did we get here, I don't need to have an answer to that personally. If someone does, good luck to them on exploring it. But even if that's the case, even if there was some magical thing, which I don't believe there is, why do we get the current Christian Bible and say that that's the story of how it happened? I mean, how can people not see that as being written by man? And then you get stories of, oh, but it's parables, or it's this, or it's, and then they select to cherry pick. I'm thinking, if you're cherry picking, that's your morals coming out.
that's why
cherry picking it.
Most of the recent debates now, it doesn't matter whether you are debating a rabbi, a Jewish rabbi, a Muslim imam, or a Christian priest or bishop of some sort. They never argue the God of the Bible. It's always almost the God of Spinoza. Suddenly they become deistic, and they'll start asking you about abiogenesis, where's the first cell come from, and the Big Bang and quantum mechanics, and suddenly their version of God has nothing to do with the guy who told Moses to kill the man who happened to pick some sticks on the Shabbat, on the Saturday, that he needed to be killed for committing an atrocity.
Yeah, so I don't understand how we can write laws to protect people who want to protect the Bible, and all of us follow those laws. It makes no sense.
So we can have your assurance that we can abandon religion and still be complete human beings. We can still celebrate Christmas, because Christmas can still stick around. Like, we can enjoy.
Christmas is a family event. And again, it comes down to monopoly. Why can't you just share and enjoy the family event? Or I think it was Seth Andrews said, everyone enjoys a Thursday, and that's after the God of Thor. You don't have to celebrate Thor. Everything's crossed over. We can all share and care. We don't have to have ownership over these things. I think that's one of my key takeaways, is that sharing and caring, and we can all be part of. We can all share in all these celebrations.
Stella, I think I've enjoyed so much the conversation. Is there anything you like to end with? Is there anything you want to highlight or grabs people's attention about, something that you'd like to, it's a bit obscure at the moment, but you'd like to get more rallying around?
I think we did just a year ago launch the Humanists Australia. So that's a national organisation that anyone can become a member of. So that one's more if you are more connected with. So Humanists Australia is more about, you're in a self and how we connect with others, and it's I guess like it's values based, and it is what you want it to be, but without a supernatural being. And then things like Rationalist Society, that's more about supporting them, would help lobby for reason and evidence-based policy. There's also the don't divide us.com.au. That's a great campaign to join as well, and they have a group. They support like a coalition of free thought groups to try and. They helped with marriage equality. They helped with the recent census campaign. There's lots of. So the census campaign was about trying to get Australians to think about whether they are still religious or not, because the question is quite skewed. The way they've written it is, what is your religion, as opposed to, do you have a religion? So there's lots out there, and perhaps if we just put some links in for people to follow through in Australia and get more information about the causes that we're supporting.
Well, I'd like to thank you again, Stella. I really enjoyed the conversation. I expected exactly that, and that you didn't disappoint. You're really very proud that you are on board with the Atheist Alliance in Australia here. I'm sure you're going to do wonderful work. And
Yeah.
if critical faculty can be of any help to you guys, uh, anything to promote reason, science, rationality, I'll be very happy to assist.
Thank you. Much appreciate having us on, and appreciate the opportunity to share our work. And
Thanks
hope
very
everyone
much.
can join us.
I am sure we'll have some future conversation in the future. I'll let you enjoy the festivities of the brand new year. But I'm probably next year I'll be in touch to maybe tee up another conversation and maybe chat about something specifically.
Well, this is one of my first podcasts, so I'll hopefully be a little bit more concise and versed next time.
You're a natural, Stella. You're a natural.
Oh, I don't know.
Thanks very much. All right, folks. Thanks very much. I'm going to be live in a couple of hours talking about Jesus from the nativity scene all the way to the crucifixion, but in Arabic. So stay tuned. I'll be live in 2 hours. Thanks very much.
Thank you.